And now I want to make way as the stage is cleared for my next presenter, my keynote speaker. Now, anybody knows about AI in this room? Who knows about AI? Please say I. Anybody knows about AI in this room? Say I. By the way, guys, what does AI stand for? What does the acronym AI? What does it mean? Huh? Say what? Artificial intelligence. Have you ever used artificial intelligence? Anybody? Anyone? Well, I have, and it has been very helpful. And as I say, I don't think AI is here to replace, it's just here to augment, to make us better. And it's all about how you use AI to augment what you're doing. And so, the keynote speaker that is about to take the stage is no stranger to AI. And this morning, we're going to be talking about AI and seeing AI, viewing AI through a practical lens. Jonathan Hart is president of AI at Sinclair, with a career spanning OpenAI, Accenture, and global leadership in roles across the world in data science and analytics. He specializes in translating complex AI systems into real-world business applications, bridging the gap between advanced technology and enterprise strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker, Mr. Jonathan Hart.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Let's give a round of applause to our host today, Miss Kitty. Also like to thank Valen and the Mystique team for putting on this great event. Let's give them a round of applause as well, yeah? Where did my clicker go? Okay, it's great to be with you guys here today. Before we get started, did anyone read the news this morning? Are there any science nerds in the house? Anybody? No? Okay. Well, scientists announced this morning that using AI technology, they have identified something that moves faster than the speed of light. Darkness. So within the light waves, there's tiny, tiny vortexes, singularities, that are actually moving faster than the light wave itself. This is amazing. This is 80 years of science, of quantum mechanics that have been turned on their head overnight by an AI technology. I think it's just a fascinating example of how AI is reshaping the way we understand our world, giving us the tools to be able to do the research, to build, and to create, and to close the gap between our imagination and reality in ways that just weren't possible before. So I know Miss Kitty gave me a great introduction there. Just a few things about me. Doesn't mean you have to listen to me, but I just want you to know where I'm coming from, right? So I was the first undergraduate hire for Accenture AI. I've won 2 Super Bowls and 5 Cannes Lions. I always have to say that when I speak at marketing and advertising conferences. Nobody else cares, but when I'm here, it seems like a big deal. So you might wonder, how does a data guy end up with 5 Cannes Lions? You can find me afterwards. I'll be happy to give you the background. I'm a Master of Science in Analytics, founding operating team at a unicorn startup called SyncCare in the US, which is focused on providing concierge care to underprivileged communities, specifically Black and brown communities in the US who are disenfranchised by the current health system. And I'm finishing my research, Doctor of Engineering in AI and Machine Learning at George Washington University, where I've been doing an internship with OpenAI. What we're going to talk about today is how to make AI work for you, how to make AI work for the Caribbean. There's a lot of discussion in the news around how to use AI to advance corporate agendas. I'm not here to talk about that today. What we can do with AI is truly amazing. I gave you the example earlier about discovering something that travels faster than light. This really has the ability to reshape our world in positive ways. But most of the news, most of the noise is around how corporations are using it for efficiency or automation. And that's really not the opportunity here. That's not the potential. So I want to take you on a journey to understand why that's the case, what we should be doing in the Caribbean, and then what you can do on an individual level to make it work better for you. So the first topic I want to talk about is the silicon gaze. So you may or may not have heard of this, but it reflects the fact that all the large language models that are currently being used, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, are built off data that we call the common crawl. And what that means is that those companies have gone out and scraped all the data that they can get off the internet, which is a lot of data. It's global in nature. It has a lot of niches in it, but it's not comprehensive, right? What it means is that anything that isn't digital, anything that doesn't have a digital fingerprint is not included in that training data set. And so what is included in that training data set? Well, it's the people who use the internet the most. And it's the people that the internet has been built for. And under capitalism, that's consumers. And so the average internet user tends to be affluent, white, male, and most of the traffic is generated for that audience. So there's already an inherent bias there. So what's the problem with that bias? Well, aside from the obvious things, the AI models that we have don't know what we don't teach them about. And so if they don't have data or a way to conceive about your identity, it hallucinates who you are. And it thinks that you're one of these average internet consumers, and it will talk to you and will give you recommendations that are in line with that and not necessarily with your culture or your specific needs. If you don't believe me, just Google the Caribbean. So this is from an incognito browser. After I landed in Jamaica, I Googled the Caribbean. And this is what Google presents, right? White sand beaches, ocean views, cheap flights. Is this the Caribbean? Is this representative of your homes? I don't think so. But this is what's being published on the internet, and this is what those models are crawling and learning from. So in addition to the identity hallucination, there are a couple other risks here. So I'm not calling this, I'm not trying to fear monger, but I just want everyone to be aware of what we're trying to work with. The second is cultural erasure. So when that data isn't present in the model while it's learning, it doesn't create recommendations, it doesn't create talk in languages that it doesn't know, and so it creates a cycle where those things get used less and less, and you run a risk of cultural erasure. And so, a specific example of this, here is local dialects, which are actually primary languages for a lot of people, are treated as secondary or translations within those tools because that's not where the majority of consumers are living. So we need to be careful that everything that we have is getting represented so that we don't end up in a cultural erasure loop. There's also economic risk. So whenever we're using AI from, let's say, outside the Caribbean, from China, from the US, from Europe, it's not trained on the problems and the opportunities that exist in the Caribbean. They're solving the problems and opportunities that exist in their markets, and rightly so, because they're spending the money. So I don't think it's, it's not intentional in any way to be excluding small developing islands or other countries, but they're just naturally focused on their own needs And the byproduct of that is the things that we really need AI for, the things that we really need to solve here, are not considered. What can we do about that? Well, we need to expand the narrative. So this is not inherently a political, position. It's not either we have these traditional archetypes, these traditional perspectives, or we have inclusive narratives. We have room for both, right? The history of everywhere, every place in the world is complicated. It has been peopled by many different cultures over many different spans of time. And it's the mesh of those things that come together that make it what it is today. And so to really understand Jamaica, we have to understand the Western perspective of finding it, and we need to understand the local perspective of how it came to be the nation that it is today. This leads us to the sovereign AI race. And so what's happening now in the news, what you probably see every day, is there's a new model out, and there's a new benchmark. Maybe you don't, maybe your LinkedIn looks very different from mine, but it makes my head spin. Even as a practitioner in this space, I can't keep up with the latest developments, who's on top, what measures, what metrics are being used. But I know that it's moving fast, and it has a ton of money behind it, right? I mean, there's billions and billions of dollars being invested in this. Why? Well, it's about sovereignty, right? So the US, China, and the European Union want to recognize the importance of AI systems in their supply chains, in their governmental processes, in their defense. And they don't want to be reliant on foreign companies to provide those services, because if there is a war or some kind of break in diplomatic relations, they could totally lose access to core infrastructure. And so, like being energy independent, people want to be sovereign AI. I had the fortune to attend a Gartner conference a few months ago, where their chief analyst was talking about this, Lydia, and she was defined it this way, right? So the sovereign AI reflects a nation state's ambition to develop and use AI without foreign assistance. What are the components of this? Infrastructure, data ownership, and model values. So can we own all three of these? Probably not. The amount of money that is being invested by the superpowers of the world is not something that we could or should try to compete with. What we need to understand are where are the places of leverage that we should engage so that we can make sure that the AI reflects our needs and our cultures and our values and solves our problems in a way that's productive for everyone. So the infrastructure, you see probably news stories about massive data centers being built all over the world. So that requires stable climate, lots of land, preferably colder temperatures with fresh water supplies for cooling the GPUs. So Caribbean is probably not a great geographical location to host those. Data ownership. So who owns and controls the data sets that are being used to train the models? This is something we can impact, right? We can make sure that the papers from our top scholars, from our top thinkers, are available in digital formats. We can work to create data about our local ecosystems, our local marine transport operations, our local commerce, and make sure that that gets included in these models that are trained, or to sit it on top of models that have already been trained by OpenAI or Claude or Google, so that it becomes specific to the problems that we're trying to solve. Model values. This is a big one. So, ensuring that the underlying logic of these models reflects how we talk and think about things, and not just the way that people talk and think about things in the Western world. So the two areas really we can focus on here is our data ownership. What data do we need to capture in this region that's going to be valuable to us in order to increase our economic prosperity? How do we get it? And how do we make sure it's used in our favor? And the model values. So when we're interacting with these models, making sure that we're influencing their ability to understand who they're talking to and what they should be talking about and how they should be talking about it. This was another slide that was shared at Gardner, the sovereign AI race around the globe. Anyone notice something particular from this map? Anything missing? Yeah, the Caribbean there is totally white, no activity here. Actually, they didn't even put most of the Caribbean islands in here, right? So this is the way that people are thinking about it at the top level when they're making decisions, and so it requires our vigilance. But there's massive opportunity in this. It's a massive opportunity in this because by collecting our own data, by infusing the models with our own values, we can create competitive advantage for ourselves and for brands that want to compete in our market. So localized intelligence, we can, if you go to a generic model and ask it to plan a media plan for, something for Carnival in Jamaica, you're going to get a very generic result. But imagine you had a version of that model that understood the local nuance, the importance of Carnival, the types of events that happened. You get a very different result. And that's the kind of result that we want these models to be able to produce and that we have in our power to make sure that they do. Another opportunity is high-stakes domains. So there's a very, very, very complicated infrastructure network for marine transport and commerce. That's, the backbone of how we move goods around the Caribbean, but isn't an issue for, countries that have large landmass areas. So brands that want to operate, companies that want to operate logistics in this, but I'm not going to come after you. So all the credit scoring models that are built, they reflect people's heavy usage of loans and credit cards and debt and things being recorded, but they don't reflect agriculture and climate resilience. When I've worked with rainfall data or global weather data, the resolution of that data is just not high enough to be practical in small areas. So this is an issue in Africa. This is an issue in the Caribbean. We need hyper-localized data to really understand how to maximize crop yields, and that's a perfect place for us to step in and create high-fidelity data sets. In the high-stakes domains, we've got blue economy logistics, which I already talked about, and trade compliance. That's a really complicated set of legal frameworks which have to be navigated between multiple countries at the same time. That's I think very difficult to do as a human from a legal perspective. It requires years and years of study and specialized knowledge, but we could leverage models in order to streamline that. And people are doing this already. They're doing it in Jamaica, they're doing it in the States, they're doing it in the Caribbean. So here's 3 examples. Key Farms, they're collecting data about seaweed volumes off the Jamaican coast to help predict what climate impact is happening in the Caribbean. So they've created a proprietary data set at a high fidelity level that describes the actual ecosystem here that can be used to inform decisions that are made around carbon emissions, carbon policies, other things. My friend John Passamore, he's been working in the US to gather non-digitized documents from historically black colleges and universities and has created a layer called Latimer that sits on top of any publicly available AI model and recognizes your ethnicity and adds in all of the context that would be missing from a generic model. So he's gone out and created these proprietary data sources by collecting all of those records, collecting historically black newspapers that didn't have digital versions. And so he's taken the massive investment that everyone's already made, and he's set this layer on top of it so that now it works for him and for the historically black colleges and universities that want to use it. Dr. Terrence Farrell, there are things that can be done, in the Caribbean for the Caribbean that don't require outside support. But it may seem a little still pie in the sky during the pandemic, and our ability to recover from it was AI driven. So I don't know if anyone's read about this, but last year, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry was given to 3 computer scientists. Not chemists, no formal chemistry training, probably hadn't even taken a chemistry class since high school. The reason it was awarded to them was because they developed an algorithm called AlphaFold, which unlocked our ability to understand 98%, 16 million. And it ran in 2 hours. And without that model, we would not have been able to ship a coronavirus vaccine. Pointed at a problem that really needed to be solved for all of humanity. So we've talked about that's an example of what happens at the global level. We've talked about some examples of what we can do in the Caribbean. And now I want to connect that to what you can do in your daily lives to be part of that movement and to receive the benefits of it. And I mentioned at the top of the presentation that there's so much focus on corporate use of AI, and so I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about what you can do as an individual, as a marketer, as a creative, as a brand manager, as a media planner. What tools are available to you to make you more productive at your job? And I call this idea the functional obscure. So if you're like me, or like a lot of people, you probably get stuck in this productivity trap, where you're just chatting with LLMs endlessly. So I think Miss Kitty asked this when she was doing the introduction, but how many people here use ChatGPT or Gemini for anything? Okay. And do you notice that the longer you talk to it, the longer the conversation gets? And the less helpful that it gets? Yeah. And you get prompt fatigue. So, the models are really powerful, but you have to be really good at giving them instructions in order to get what you want. And that's difficult. And all those examples I just talked about, none of them seem to have instructions, right? So, why is this? Well, customers are wasting, we're wasting just hours of our lives chatting with an empty machine. And the goal is not that we would shift from these general chatbots into something functional that, just sits under the tool and helps you as you're doing your work. And we're almost there. So, 2023, that was chaos. ChatGPT 3.5 got released. Everyone was amazed. Everyone rushed to try it out. And then we entered this maze of prompt fatigue where we are now. And finally this year and last year, I think we've really gotten applications that have come out, AI that's been built into those applications, which is functional. And so you don't interact with it by chatting, you interact with it through tools. So if you use Photoshop, you've probably seen this. There's a million tools out there, but none of them are as popular as the large language models. So what I want to give you an opportunity to do is to find a set of tools that works for your workflow. And so I've created a take-home for the conference here called Pathfinder. You'll find it inside of the conference dashboard. I think it's called Task DNA. And what this will allow you to do is to link your LinkedIn profile. I guess I should have done, that sounds really weird, huh? Link your LinkedIn profile. Log in with your LinkedIn profile, and it will scrape your profile data, ask you a few questions about what your biggest bottlenecks or repeated tasks are, and then it will create a guide for you on how to get started based on your level. So it'll show you a selection of tools that I've hand curated, which can help you to produce content, produce an Instagram campaign in under a day, to help with copywriting, whatever it is that is unique to your domain within the brand and marketing space and aligns with your level. And so I use this as an example in two ways. So first of all, this is an AI recommendation engine that you don't have to chat with, right? You just give it your data, and it tells you what you should be doing. And the tools that it's going to give you back are not ChatGPT or Gemini or large language models to chat with. They are tools that have functional AI built into them to accelerate your workflows. So you can go to the Task DNA on the conference dashboard, or you can scan this QR code with the very cute dinosaur inside of it, and let me know what you think. There's a thumbs up, thumbs down button. So if the recommendations are not helpful, I'd want to know that as well. But yeah, that's my gift to you for this conference. Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully you're excited about the opportunity of AI at a global level for the Caribbean. And thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience. I hope you learned something today. I hope you're excited about AI, and I hope you use the tool and find something that makes your job faster or easier, or maybe at least a little bit less annoying. Thank you very much.
All right, good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. Is everybody doing well? Did you enjoy Jonathan's presentation? All right, I'm gonna come ask you because I'm never in here. So I'm going to need the notes from someone so that I can be apprised of all the information, all the nuggets, and all the tips that he shared. But guess what, guys? Right now, we have the Prime Minister of Barbados, and she will be talking about governing in the age of influence.
We need today under a word that ought to make every leader, every marketer, every communicator, and every citizen pause. What is the word? Impact. Impact is not applause, it is not the photograph. It's not the post that travels far and wide and dies in a few days. Impact is the measure of whether a message has moved a mind and whether a policy has reached a household. Whether a country has become more resilient, more truthful, more dignified, and more free because of what was said, what was heard, and what was done afterward. And that is why this conversation about marketing and intelligence cannot be treated as a technical gathering of professionals speaking only to professionals. Good day, everyone. In 2026, marketing and intelligence, my friends, sit at the center of governance, commerce, diplomacy, culture, climate action, and democracy itself. Intelligence is older still. Information is what reaches you. Intelligence is what you understand from it. Information can flood a phone. Intelligence decides what matters. It reads the weather before the storm, the room before the conflict, the mood before the policy, the data before the danger, the silence, yes, before the rupture. Placed together now, marketing and intelligence become one of the greatest questions of our time. How do we shape attention without abusing it? Use data without dehumanizing people, speak with speed without sacrificing truth, and build influence without losing integrity. Paid media can buy visibility, it cannot buy belief. An advertisement can rent the eyes of a people, but it cannot rent their soul. Trust, my friends, must be earned in the ordinary hours, before the hurricane warning, before the cyber attack, before the malicious lie, before the difficult reform, before the hard truth that a leader must sometimes ask a people to bear. You cannot emergency purchase trust. That is the first truth of the age of influence. The emergent truth is this: we are no longer speaking through platforms. We're speaking inside systems that are learning how to speak back. Artificial intelligence is no longer a future story. It is in the search engine that ranks our countries. It is in the feed that carries the fares of our children. It is in the model that prices risk. It is in the agent that answers a tourist question before that tourist ever reaches our own website. It is in the image that looks real, the voice that sounds familiar, the video that never happened, the rumor that travels faster than any politician can respond. This is the double edge before us. Properly governed, this intelligence can help us map our course, predict floods, strengthen food security, personalize education, manage water, optimize energy, detect disease, support small businesses, translate the Caribbean to itself, and indeed our story to the world with a precision that our grandparents could scarcely have imagined. Left unguided, it can flatten cultures, accelerate fraud, deepen inequality, manufacture hatred, clone faces, counterfeit voices, yes, and make truth appear slow, tired, and uncertain. AI solutions must never become AI destructions. The question is whether our intelligence will remain human enough, moral enough, and Caribbean enough, yes, to govern artificial intelligence before artificial intelligence governs us. Humility must not become passivity. Small states cannot afford to stand at the edge of the future with visitor badges around our necks. We know what happens when rules are designed elsewhere, and we're invited afterwards to adapt. We know what happens when the architecture of finance, trade, climate, or technology is written without the presence of those who will carry the consequences. Nothing is neutral when power writes the code. Algorithmic colonialism would mean that our people become data, our culture becomes content, our economies become customers, our politics becomes targets, and our children, yes, become experiments. Digital sovereignty means the opposite. It means consent before extraction. It means dignity before data. It means Caribbean languages, accents, histories, risk, and realities must be present in the systems that claim to understand the world. An AI that cannot hear a Bajan cheese on bread, or a Jamaican patois, or the sing-song cadence of a Trinidadian cannot claim to understand this region. A Guyanese with a broad R. We're not here to adopt the future as consumers. We're here to help birth it as a civilization. And that birth must be tripartite. The state with standards, rights, and enforcement, the private sector with innovation, disclosure, and responsibility, and civil society, universities, journalists, creators, churches, youth movements, and communities with scrutiny, imagination, memory, courage, and conscience. Marketing is no longer a poster or a slogan or a jingle or a press release placed on Instagram with a caption. That is analog thinking dressed in digital clothes, yes. Marketing is narrative architecture. It is building a house of meaning strong enough for the nation to live in and open enough for each community to enter through its own door. Storytelling has not died. It never will. It has multiplied. The lie has to be learned to be beautiful. Truth must therefore, my friends, refuse to be boring. Government cannot merely issue information and call it communication. A nation cannot merely issue slogans and call it identity. You cannot parachute a message into a lived reality and call it engagement. We need to understand how people speak, where they hurt, what they fear, what they hope, what they distress, and what they've survived. As I've always said, we must see people, hear people, and feel people. The parish and the platform are no longer separate geographies. The phone is now the neighborhood street, whether we like it or not, and the market, the rum shop, the newsroom, the prayer chain, the bank, the campaign office, and the emergency siren are all there in that phone too. Any government that treats the phone as a billboard misunderstands the age. We must not shrink truth to the size of a notification. And we must use speed as a doorway to depth, not as a prison against it. And that is where the Caribbean has something profound to teach the algorithmic age. Reggae did not need a boosted post to become global. Calypso or Kaiso or Soca, or whatever you choose to call it, did not need an algorithm to become commentary. Dancehall did not wait for validation. Soca, again, did not ask permission to teach the Caribbean to move with joy after pain. Our music crossed borders because it carried something true, something authentic. The story that travels deepest is the one that carries a real pulse. And sometimes the most powerful messenger is a nurse in St. Lucie in my country, or the teacher in Clarendon in yours, or a fisherman somewhere off the banks of the Cayman Islands, or the smaller hotelier in the Bahamas, the Calypsonian in Port of Spain, the coder in Kingstown, St. Vincent, and the farmer, my friends, in St. Lucia. The grandmother who knows when a storm warning is serious because she remembers that the last time the sea came where the road used to be. Micro-influence is not small influence. It is, however, trusted influence. It is the parish voice. It is the community pulse. It is specificity. It is the antidote to the anesthetic of mass messaging. A nation does not need one script. It needs one moral center. Many tongues, one truth. Many stories, one belonging. Many channels, one covenant. This is what national narrative must become. Not propaganda, not vanity. National narrative must be the truthful frame through which a people can see their struggle, their possibilities, and yes, their duty to each other. Trust is climate infrastructure. When a storm approaches, the alert that saves a life travels through relationships, but long before this alert. When a country asks the world for climate justice, the case must be told with evidence, emotion, and moral clarity. The countries whose risks are not measured pay more. The island whose losses are invisible is told to be patient by those who built their wealth on emissions that we did not produce. Artificial intelligence, my friends, can help us make the invisible visible. Storm surge, coastal erosion, water stress, early warnings, parametric insurance, and the evidence no creditor rating agency or polluter can casually dismiss. We know it, you felt it. That is intelligence in service of justice. Artificial intelligence must be climate intelligent. Intelligence is not secrecy, intelligence is sense-making. An artificial intelligence can inform human intuition, but it cannot replace it. It can accelerate analysis, but it cannot supply moral judgment. It can produce language, but it cannot know love of country or carry the responsibility for a child, a cause, a constitution, or a people in the way that humans do. That responsibility, my friends, remains ours. We need provenance standards, algorithmic audits, procurement rules, data protection, digital literacy, and rapid response systems that can counter lies without criminalizing dissent. Disagreement is not disinformation. Criticism is not treason. And satire is not sabotage. Government must be strong enough to respond. It must be humble enough to be questioned. This matters even more in an age where every citizen now receives a personalized version of the rum shop. In the old rum shop, we could disagree about what the speech meant, but at least we had often heard the same speech. In the algorithmic rum shop, two citizens living on the same street, sometimes in the same house, can inhabit completely different realities before breakfast. One receives a warning, another receives a rumor. One sees policy, another sees parody. One sees a fact check, another sees the lie before the fact check has put on its shoes. This is not just a communications problem, it is a governance problem. A society cannot make common decisions if it cannot share common facts. Trust, therefore, my friends, is no longer soft. Trust is strategic infrastructure. And that is why marketing and intelligence must be joined to ethics. The Caribbean has always had to do more with less. That has been our reality. We have turned scarcity into style and pressure into poetry. Now we must build digital influence from that same source. Not noise, meaning, not artificial intimacy, real relationship at digital speed. Communication must sit at the table when policy is being born. The best communication is not in decoration, but yes, in design. And this is where paid media, earned trust, and national narrative must come together. Paid media must know its place. Earned trust is slower, but it is stronger. And it comes when government returns after the camera leaves, when citizens can find the data behind the claim, when leaders admit uncertainty without surrendering authority, and when communication is not a performance at the people, but a conversation with the people. National narrative gives the conversation a home, and it says who we are and what we're trying to build, what we refuse to surrender, and why sacrifice may sometimes be necessary. For Barbados, for Jamaica, for the wider Caribbean, the story must be large enough to hold climate justice, economic transformation, democratic trust, cultural power, digital sovereignty, the fight against injustice, and the everyday hopes of families who simply want a fair chance to live well. It must stretch from the cabinet room to the classroom, from the data center to the fishing boat, and from the global stage, my friends, yes, to the kitchen table. The leader has the heaviest duty of all, to make meaning when fear is loud. And there is no app for that. There is no model that can carry that burden on behalf of a people. Leadership remains human. In the algorithmic age, leadership must be both ancient and modern. Ancient enough to know that character still matters, and modern enough to know that a deep fake can cross the world before a press release leaves a ministry. Ancient enough to understand that trust is relational. Modern enough to understand that trust is now searchable, shareable, measurable, forgeable, regrettably, and attackable. This is not a reason for despair, but it is a call to seriousness. The Caribbean must bring seriousness to this new age without losing our joy. The new intelligence must never strip us of that. Let us use marketing to invite people into purpose, not to manipulate them into compliance. My friends, the age before us will reward speed. We must now add wisdom. It will reward scale. We must equally add intimacy. It will reward prediction. We must add conscience. It will reward attention. We must add truth. It will reward intelligence. We must add humanity. We can be small and still be early. We can be vulnerable and still be visionary. We can be under-resourced and still be morally overqualified to lead. We can take the technologies of the world and bend them towards the dignity of our people. The question before us is whether influence will fracture societies or summon them to purpose. Without rules, it can drag us towards anarchy with a user interface. The choice will not be made by the machine, it'll be made by us. And let us therefore build the guardrails now. Let us build the talent. Let us build the trust. Let us build the regional compact. And let us build a narrative architecture strong enough to hold a people in an age of speed. Let the Caribbean, my friends, stand together at this frontier, not as small places begging to be included, but as moral innovators reminding the world that progress without people is merely acceleration, and intelligence without wisdom is danger, pretending to be brilliance. Let the Caribbean once again be small only on the map and mighty in the moral imagination of our world. We do this, and we build for the next generation. I thank you.